She walked into the Mafia's world with a secret that could destroy everything. But the one man she was never supposed to love became her only safe place. As the past slowly comes back to life, every promise begins to unravel. Some truths don't just break hearts, they change destinies forever. You are listening to a story exclusively narrated on the Dark Romance Stories channel. Relax and step into the world of love stories filled with mystery, emotions, and passion. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment to support us. This content is the property of Dark Romance Stories. Please do not copy or re-upload it in any form. The desert night burned neon over Las Vegas, and Dante Ferraro watched it from the 40th floor as if the entire city were a fire he had lit himself. He did not turn when the door opened behind him. He knew the sound of every man in his employ by the weight of their step, and this step belonged to Enzo, his consigliere, his father's oldest friend, the only man alive who could enter this room without knocking and survive it. "He's gone," Enzo said. Dante lifted the crystal tumbler to his lips. The whiskey was older than he was. His father had bought it the year Dante was born. "The year we brought you home," the old man used to say. And Dante had never understood the strange grief that always shadowed the word home when Salvatore Ferraro said it. "When?" Dante asked. 20 minutes ago. The doctors did everything. His heart—" Enzo stopped. Men like them did not speak of hearts. "It was quiet. He wasn't in pain." Dante finally turned. He was 32, and the city's glow carved his face into something colder than handsome. A jaw like a closed fist, eyes so dark the pupil vanished into the iris. He wore his grief the way he wore his suits, perfectly, invisibly, tailored so tight against the skin that no one could see the shape of what was underneath. "Then it's done," Dante said. "The Ferraro Empire is mine." Enzo bowed his head, but there was hesitation in it. A flicker Dante caught the way a wolf catches a limp in the herd. "There's the matter of your brother," Enzo said. Dante set the glass down. "Luca will be told like everyone else. He'll expect more than that. He always does." Below them, the Ferraro Grand pulsed. 3,000 rooms, 40 gaming floors, a river of money that never stopped flowing, laundered clean through 100 shell companies from Naples to Nevada. Salvatore had built it out of nothing but nerve and blood. And now it belonged to the son who had earned it, not the son who had merely been born into it. That was how Dante saw the world. Earning. Everything else was theatre. "There's one more thing," Enzo said, and now his voice dropped into the register men used for landmines. "The Marchetti girl arrives tomorrow. Sofia. For the engagement." Something in Dante's chest tightened, though his face did not move. He had heard the name for 3 months. Sofia Marchetti, the daughter of a Neapolitan family, promised to seal an alliance older than either of them. Promised to Luca, his brother's bride. A stranger, a treaty in a dress, a name Dante had filed away with the same indifference he gave the price of concrete. "Then the wedding proceeds as planned," Dante said. "Business doesn't stop because a man dies. That's the first thing my father taught me." "And the second?" Dante picked the glass back up. Trust nothing you love. She arrived the next evening, and Dante broke his own rule within 90 seconds. He had meant to send a driver. He had meant to be a signature on a document, a distant future brother-in-law, a shadow at the head of a table. Instead, he found himself in the private arrivals lounge of the airport, telling himself it was courtesy, telling himself it was for Luca, telling himself the lie so smoothly he almost believed it. Then the door opened, and Sofia Marchetti walked through it, and every lie he'd ever told himself went silent all at once. She was not what he expected. He had expected a treaty, a frightened girl or a spoiled one, some pale Neapolitan aristocrat trained to smile through a marriage she hadn't chosen. What walked toward him instead moved like she owned the floor beneath her heels. Dark hair, dark eyes, a red dress the colour of a warning, and a stillness in her face that was not fear at all. It was calculation, quick and hidden, the look of someone always 3 moves ahead. She saw him and stopped. For 1 second, one single, dangerous second, neither of them said anything. The air between them changed pressure, like the moment before lightning. "You're not Luca," she said. "No. You're the other one." Her eyes moved over him, unhurried, and he felt it like a hand. "The dangerous one. They warned me about you." "Who did?" She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had already decided not to answer. "Dante Ferraro," she said instead, tasting the name, "the son who runs everything, the one who feels nothing." She tilted her head. "Is it true?" He should have said yes. He should have handed her to Enzo, walked back to his tower, and never let this woman closer than a dinner table for the rest of his life. He was the head of a family now. He had an empire in one hand and his brother's honour in the other, and both of them depended on him being exactly the man she'd just described. Instead, he stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks buried in her irises, close enough that she had to lift her chin. "Yes," he lied, and Sofia Marchetti looked at him like she knew. Outside, the desert wind moved the palms, and somewhere across the city, Luca Ferraro was drinking in a nightclub he did not own yet, smiling a smile no one would understand until it was far, far too late. The war had already begun. None of them knew it yet, not the way it would end, not who would be left standing, not the secret buried in the ground beneath them all. But it had begun, in a red dress and a single lie, on the night an empire changed hands. Luca Ferraro made an entrance the way other men made threats. The nightclub was called Inferno, and it belonged to the family, which meant it belonged to Dante now, though Luca behaved in it like a prince in his own court. He came down the glass staircase with 2 women on his arm and a smile that had cost their father a fortune in orthodontics and forgiveness. 28 years old, golden where Dante was dark, charming where Dante was cold, beloved by everyone who had never once had to depend on him. "Brother!" Luca called across the VIP floor, arms wide. "The king is dead! Long live the king!" Heads turned. Dante did not rise from the booth. "Sit down, Luca." "Is that any way to greet your only blood?" Luca dropped into the leather beside him, waving the women off with a flick of 2 fingers. Up close the charm thinned. His eyes were quick and restless, always measuring, always counting the room. Papa's barely cold, and you've already got the throne warm under you. I admire the efficiency, I really do. Someone has to run it. Someone. Luca reached for Dante's glass and drank from it without asking. An old habit, a small trespass he'd been performing since childhood to prove that nothing of Dante's was truly Dante's alone. You know what people are saying? They're saying the will was strange. Everything to you, the casinos, the Naples holdings, the seat at the commission table. And to me? He set the glass down. A monthly allowance. Like I'm a nephew, like I'm staff. You're provided for. I'm managed. The word came out with an edge, then he laughed and buried it under charm again. But no matter. I have my consolations. I hear my bride has arrived. His grin widened. Have you seen her? Dante kept his face still. It was the hardest thing he had done all day. Briefly. And? Is she beautiful? They tell me she's beautiful. A Marchetti. Old blood, old money. The kind of alliance Papa dreamed about. Luca leaned back, spreading his arms across the booth. You know, it's funny. He gave you the empire, but he gave me the girl who seals it. Almost as if he wanted us to need each other. His eyes glittered. Almost. You'll marry her in the spring, Dante said. The families are expecting it. Of course. Of course. Luca studied his brother with a look that lingered a half-second too long, a look Dante would remember much later and understand far too late. You'll walk me down the aisle, won't you? Give the bride away, big brother, since Papa can't. If that's what you want, it's what I want. Luca stood, buttoning his jacket. It's exactly what I want. He tossed a folded bill onto the table, though the club was his brother's and no bill was needed. A small trespass, always. Take care of her until the wedding, Dante. Show her the city. Keep her... He searched for the word, and when he found it, his smile turned into something Dante didn't have a name for yet. Close. He walked back up the glass stairs, and every eye in the room followed him, and none of them saw what Dante saw, that his brother had not once asked how their father died. Sofia could not sleep. They had given her a suite on the 38th floor, 2 below Dante's penthouse, a fact she noted the way she noted everything, as intelligence. The bed was silk, and the view was gold, and the door had a lock. She trusted about as far as she could throw the building. She stood at the window in a black slip and looked at the city and thought about the man at the airport, the dangerous one. She had said it to unsettle him, the way she said most things, a probe, a knife slipped in gently to see what bled. She had been trained for this. 3 families had raised her to be a weapon disguised as a woman. How to listen, how to lie, how to make a powerful man feel for one intoxicating moment that he was the only one who truly saw her. But the man at the airport had not reacted the way men reacted. He had not softened. He had not preened. He had stepped closer, and in his black eyes she had seen something that frightened her, because it mirrored the thing she kept locked in her own chest. A loneliness so total it had turned to steel. Her phone buzzed. A number with no name. She answered on the second ring, voice low. "You're there," said the man on the other end. Not a question. Her handler. The voice she had obeyed her whole life. "I'm here." "Good. The old man is dead. That's a complication, but it's also an opportunity. The elder son controls everything now. Dante. A pause. Get close to the family. Learn the routes, the accounts, the names at the commission table. We need to know how the Ferraro money moves before we take it. Sofia watched the car glide silently down the strip 40 floors below. I'm engaged to the younger brother, she said, not Dante. Then use the younger brother to reach the elder. You know how this works. The voice hardened. Do not develop feelings, Sofia. Do not forget who you are or who owns you. You have one job. Ferraro blood took your mother from you. Now you take everything from them. A breath. Don't disappoint us. The line went dead. Sofia set the phone face down on the silk and pressed her cold hands to her arms. Below her, the city burned on, indifferent, beautiful. And somewhere, 2 floors above her, a cold man lay awake thinking of a red dress. And somewhere across the city, a golden man smiled at a plan no one could see. And Sofia Marchetti stood alone between them all, a spy who did not yet know she was also a secret. Revenge, she told herself. That was all this was. That was all she was. She almost believed it. He asked me to show you the city, Dante said. It was noon, and Sofia had not expected him. She had expected a driver, or Luca, or one of the silent men in dark suits who seemed to grow out of the walls of the Ferraro Grand. Instead, Dante stood in her doorway, in a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button open, looking like a man who had never in his life waited for anything. Luca asked you, she repeated. Luca asked me. And you always do what your brother asks. Something flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. Dante did not smile, but the ghost of where one might live if he ever allowed it. Get your coat, Miss Marchetti. Vegas is ugly in the daylight, but I'll show you the parts that aren't. She should have refused. Every instinct she'd been trained into screamed that this was the wrong brother, the dangerous brother, the one her handler had not authorized her to want. She got her coat. He drove himself. That surprised her. A man with 100 soldiers driving his own black car through the desert, one hand on the wheel, the city falling away behind them until there was nothing but red rock and open sky. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. You don't talk much. I talk when there's something worth saying. She turned in her seat to study him. In the daylight, he was harder and somehow younger, the sun finding lines around his eyes that the neon had hidden. They told me about you, she said. In Naples, before I came. And what did they say? That you were born mean. That your father found you fighting bigger boys in the street when you were 6 and decided that meant something. That you've killed men with your hands. She watched his knuckles on the wheel, and they did not tighten. That you love nothing and no one. All true, Dante said. Even the last part? He was quiet for a mile of desert, especially the last part. They came over a rise, and there it was, a canyon opening up beneath them, red and gold and vast, the whole indifferent grandeur of the earth, spread out below a sky so blue it hurt. Dante stopped the car at the edge and got out, and after a moment she followed, the wind pulling at her hair. "My father used to bring me here," Dante said, looking out at it, "when I was a boy. He said this was the only place in America worth seeing without a price tag on it." A pause. "He was a monster, my father, but he wasn't wrong about much." Sofia stood beside him at the edge of the world. This was the moment she knew, the exact kind of moment she'd been trained to create. The powerful man, made vulnerable by open sky, ready to be understood, ready to be reached. All she had to do was say the right, soft thing. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. "My mother died when I was 9, she said. "I don't remember her face anymore, only her voice. She used to sing to me in Neapolitan, these old, sad songs, and I've spent my whole life trying to remember the words, and I can't." The wind took her voice thin. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." Dante looked at her then, really looked, and something passed between them that neither had permission to feel. "Because I asked," he said quietly. "And because no one's asked you anything real in a long time." I know the look. She should have laughed it off. She should have leaned into him, played the part, executed the seduction she'd been sent to perform. Instead, she took a step back. Because for the first time in her carefully engineered life, she was afraid the seduction might run the other way. "You're going to be my brother," she said. It came out like a defense. "Yes." "Then why does it feel like a warning to be standing next to you?" Dante turned to face her fully. The wind moved between them. He was close enough to touch, and both of them knew it, and neither of them moved. And the not moving was somehow more intimate than anything either of them had ever done with another human being. "Because it is," Dante said. They drove back in silence, and the silence was worse than any conversation because it was full. At the hotel, he walked her to the private elevator and pressed the button for her floor and did not step in with her. "Sofia," he said, as the doors began to close. She caught them with her hand. "Yes?" He looked at her for a long moment, and whatever he had meant to say, he swallowed it, buried it, the way he buried everything. "Nothing," he said. "Rest. Luca will want to see you tomorrow." The doors closed. She rode up alone, her heart doing something reckless and unfamiliar in her chest. And up in his tower, Dante Ferraro poured a drink he did not want, and stood at his window, and understood, with the cold clarity he brought to every business decision of his life, that he was in serious trouble. He wanted his brother's wife, not later, not eventually. Now, completely, with a hunger that frightened him because he had spent 32 years believing he was incapable of it. He drank the whiskey and made himself a promise he would break within the week. Never again, never touch her, never let her see it. 2 floors below, Sofia lay awake with the same promise, and neither of them slept. And the desert wind blew warm against the glass of the tower they were both trapped inside. One, a spy who had forgotten her mission for an afternoon. One, a king who had just discovered his own throat. The family dinner was a performance, and everyone at the table was acting. They held it in the private dining room at the top of the Ferraro Grand. 20 guests, crystal and candlelight, the old capos flown in from Naples and Chicago and New York to pay respects to the dead king and take the measure of the new one. Sofia sat at Luca's right hand, her engagement ring catching the light every time she lifted her wine. and directly across from her, at the head of the table where his father used to sit, was Dante. He had not looked at her once. She had counted. "To my father," Dante said, rising, glass in hand. The room went silent. "Salvatore Ferraro built something out of nothing. He taught me that loyalty is the only currency that never inflates, and that a man is only as strong as the people he can trust at his back." His black eyes moved across the table, capo by capo, and every man felt the weight of them. "I intend to honour his memory, and I intend to hold what he built, all of it." A pause, precise as a blade. "Salute. Salute," the room echoed. Luca did not drink. Sofia noticed. He turned his glass slowly by the stem, smiling, and when Dante sat, Luca leaned toward her and murmured, "My brother gives a beautiful speech. He should have been a priest, all that talk of loyalty." He sipped at last. "Pity he's never trusted a soul in his life." "And you have?" Sofia asked lightly. "I trust you, cara." Luca's hand covered hers on the white tablecloth, warm and possessive, and across the table she felt Dante's attention snap to it like a struck match, though when she glanced up, his face was carved from stone. "I trust you completely. You're going to be a Ferraro, and a Ferraro is loyal above all things." He squeezed her hand. "Isn't that right, brother?" "That's right," Dante said, and for the first time all evening he looked at her, and it was not the look of a brother, and Luca, smiling, watching, always watching, saw it too. The dinner unspooled in the way these dinners did. Business laced through pleasantries, threats dressed as compliments, the slow, careful dance of men deciding whether to kneel or knife the new king. An old capo named Don Vittorio from the New York families dabbed his mouth and said, too casually, "The Marchetti alliance is a fine thing, Dante, old blood, but some are asking, with your father gone, whether the girl marries into strength or into a house about to fall." The table stilled. Dante set down his fork. "Is that what some are asking, Don Vittorio?" "I only repeat what I hear." "Then hear this, and repeat it too." Dante's voice never rose. That was the terror of him. He never had to. "Any man at this table, or any man he answers to, who mistakes my father's funeral for an opening, will discover that I am not my father. My father was patient. My father forgave debts." He let the silence stretch until it hurt. "I am not patient, and I forgive nothing. Eat your dinner, Don Vittorio. The veal is very good." Vittorio ate his dinner. Sofia watched it all with a spy's cold attention and a woman's warm dread, and she thought, "He is exactly what they told me. Cold, dangerous, a killer. And then, unbidden, treacherous. And he told me about the canyon, and his father. And no one else at this table knows he can be reached." She excused herself. She needed air, or she needed to stop feeling things, and only one was available. The terrace was empty and cold, the desert night pouring down over the strip. She had been there perhaps 2 minutes when the door opened behind her, and she knew, without turning, that it was him. She was learning the weight of his step, the way he learned everyone's. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Dante said. "I'm never alone. Your brother watches me like I'm going to run. Your capos watch me like I'm a bomb. She turned. And you don't watch me at all. You spent an entire dinner not looking at me. I counted. I know you did, Dante said. I counted you counting. The confession hung between them in the cold air. This is a mistake, Sofia said. Her voice shook and she hated it. Whatever this is, you're going to be my brother. I'm going to marry Luca in the spring. It's arranged. It's done. I know. Then say something. Tell me I'm imagining it. Tell me you feel nothing, the way they all say you feel nothing. And I'll believe you, and we'll go back inside and never speak of it. Dante crossed the terrace. He stopped an arm's length from her, never closer, never touching, as if the last inch were a cliff edge they were both refusing to fall from. I can't tell you that, he said, low and rough, and it cost him something visible, this man who had never in his life admitted to wanting anything he could not simply take. I've told you every lie I've ever needed to survive. I told you I feel nothing the day we met. I can't tell you that one again. Not to you. It stopped working. Dante, go back inside, Sofia. He stepped away first, breaking it, the discipline of a lifetime pulling him back from the edge. Marry my brother. Forget the canyon. It's the only mercy I have to give you, and I'm giving it. Go inside. She went inside. Her hands were shaking. She sat back down beside Luca and smiled and lifted her wine. And Luca leaned close and murmured, Are you cold, cara? You look flushed. And behind his charming smile, his eyes flicked once to the terrace door and once to his brother's empty chair, and something in them was very, very pleased. It happened during a blackout. A transformer blew somewhere out in the desert, and half the strip went dark, the great neon rivers guttering out all at once. And in the Ferraro Grand, the emergency generators caught the vital systems, the vault, the cameras, the gaming floors, but not the residential tower. For 11 minutes, 40 floors of the most powerful family in Nevada sat in absolute darkness. Sofia was in the stairwell. She had been going up, not down, toward safety, but up, toward the penthouse, toward him, on a pretext she'd been building in her mind for 3 days and had not admitted even to herself. Something about the accounts, something about a question only Dante could answer. She had made it to the 39th floor landing when the lights died and the world went black and silent, and she stood there in the dark with her heart pounding, and she heard a door open above her. Sofia! Just her name. He couldn't see her. He knew anyway. How do you always know it's me? I don't know. His voice came down through the dark, closer now, footsteps on the concrete stairs. I just do. Where are you? On the landing. A hand found her arm in the blackness, warm, certain. She should have flinched away. She turned toward it instead. You shouldn't be here, Dante said, but he did not let go of her arm. In the dark, his voice had lost the armor it wore in the light. It was just a man's voice now, low and unguarded, inches from her face. I told you to stay away from me. I know. I meant it. I know. Then why are you climbing the stairs to my floor in the middle of the night? She didn't answer, because the answer was unspeakable, because the answer would burn everything down. And in the silence, in the perfect dark where no camera could see and no capo could watch and no arrangement could reach them, The last inch finally closed. She never knew afterward who moved first. She told herself, in the guilty light of every morning that came after, that he had reached for her because she was a spy, because she had a mission, because to be the one who reached was to be the one who chose, and she could not bear to have chosen. But the truth she buried deeper than any secret her handler had ever given her, was that they moved at the same instant, both of them, two starving people finally admitting the hunger, and his mouth found hers in the dark, and the last 11 minutes of the blackout were the first 11 minutes of the rest of both their ruined lives. He kissed her like a man who had denied himself everything and had finally decided to stop. His hand slid up from her arm to her jaw, cradling her face, and the tenderness of it undid her more than any violence could have. She had been touched before. She had used her body as an instrument her whole adult life, but she had never been held like this, like she was something that might break, like she was something worth being careful with. "This is a mistake," she breathed against his mouth. "Yes," he said, and kissed her again. "We can't." "No," he agreed, and did not stop. The lights came back. They flooded the stairwell all at once, brutal and fluorescent, and the two of them broke apart, blinking, faces flushed, and for one suspended second they simply stared at each other in the merciless light. The king and the spy, the brother and the bride, the two people in the world who could not be doing exactly what they had just done. "Dante," her voice cracked. "If anyone..." No one saw. He was already recovering, the armour sliding back over him, but his eyes were wild in a way she'd never seen. "No one saw, Sofia. Look at me. No one saw. They kill people for this." She was shaking now, the enormity of it landing. "Your world. This isn't a scandal, Dante. It's a death sentence. For me. Your brother's fiancé. They'd..." She couldn't finish. "No one," Dante said, taking her face in both hands, forcing her eyes to his, "is ever going to touch you. Do you understand me? Not my brother, not the commission, not God himself. I will burn this entire empire to the ground before I let one hair on your head come to harm. That's not a promise, Sofia. That's a fact of the universe now. You belong to me, from this second, and I protect what's mine." It was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever said to her. It was also the only time in her entire life she had ever felt safe. "I have to go," she whispered. He let her go. It was the hardest thing she'd ever seen a man do. She watched it cost him, watched his hands open and release her, like a man setting down something he'd carry the ache of forever. She fled down 39 flights of stairs rather than take the elevator, because the elevator had cameras and her face was a confession. And she ran into her suite and locked the door that locked nothing and slid down against it to the floor and pressed her fingers to her mouth where his had been. Her phone buzzed, the number with no name. She looked at it ringing on the silk bed, glowing in the dark, the voice that owned her, the mission, the revenge, the mother whose face she couldn't remember. She let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again, and 40 floors above her, Dante Ferraro stood at his window with his brother's ring still glinting in his memory on the finger of the only woman he had ever loved. And he understood that he had just committed the one crime his world could never forgive, and that he would commit it again and again and again until it killed him. He was right about that. It would kill him, but not the way he thought. Luca knew. He had known before the blackout. He'd seen it on the terrace, seen it at the dinner, seen it in the way his brother's jaw locked when Luca laid a hand on Sofia's. Luca had spent his whole life watching Dante, studying the one thing in the world he could not out-charm or out-earn. And he had learned to read the microscopic weather of that stone face better than anyone alive. He sat now in a car across the street from the Ferraro Grand at 3 a.m, and the man beside him, a thin, nervous man who worked in the hotel's security office, handed him a flash drive. "The stairwell camera," the man said. "39th floor. During the blackout, the emergency system kept the vault feeds live, but the residential cameras went dark, like you said. But this one," he tapped the drive, "this one runs on a separate battery, independent. Your father had it installed years ago. Nobody knows it's there. It caught 11 minutes. Luca turned the drive over in his fingers, smiling. "And you're the only one who's seen it. The only one. I swear it. I brought it straight to you, Mr. Ferraro, just like—" Luca shot him. The suppressor made a sound like a book closing. The man slumped against the window, and Luca calmly reached across, took the man's phone, wiped the drive transfer log, and got out of the car into the warm desert night. 2 of his men would handle the rest. There was a great deal of open desert around Las Vegas, and it kept its secrets well. Luca walked 3 blocks to a diner, ordered coffee, and watched the 11 minutes on a laptop. He watched his brother, cold, untouchable, incorruptible Dante, the golden boy of loyalty, the man who lectured a table full of capos about betrayal, kiss the woman promised to Luca in the dark of a stairwell. He watched Dante hold her face like she was made of glass. He watched him say something the audio didn't catch, and he watched Sofia flee, and he sat back in the vinyl booth and laughed, softly, until the waitress asked if he was all right. "I'm wonderful," Luca told her. "I've never been better in my life." Because this was everything. Luca Ferraro had not spent the last 2 years planning a coup because he wanted his brother's casinos, though he did want them. He had planned it because of a wound so old and so deep he no longer felt it as pain, only as purpose. The wound of being second. The wound of a father who looked at his charming younger son with affection and at his cold elder son with respect, and who had never once in 28 years confused the two. Everything to Dante. An allowance to Luca. Even from the grave, the old man had made his verdict clear. But there was one law even Salvatore's ghost could not override. The commission, the council of families that governed their whole bloody world, held certain sins above all others: killing a made man without sanction, talking to the feds, and touching the promised wife of a brother. That last one was death, automatic, no trial, no appeal, no mercy. A man who dishonored his own blood that way could be executed by that blood without consequence, and the commission would nod and call it justice. Dante had just handed Luca the throne. He simply didn't know it yet. But Luca was patient in the way his brother never understood. Dante thought patience was weakness, but Luca knew it was the sharpest weapon of all. He would not use the tape now. Now was too soon. now was merely an affair, a private shame, deniable. No, he would let it grow. He would let his brother fall deeper, let the affair build until it was undeniable, until there were witnesses, until Dante was so lost in Sofia that he'd forget to guard his flank. And then Luca would expose it in front of the entire commission, at the moment of maximum damage, and take everything. And Sofia, Sofia. That was the part that made Luca smile into his coffee, because Sofia was not what any of them thought either. Luca knew things about his bride-to-be that Sofia herself did not know, things that had come to him through channels his father never suspected he had, things about a woman who died in Naples 19 years ago, things about blood. He was not the only one running a long game in the Ferraro house. He would let that play out too. It amused him, all these people moving in the dark, thinking they were the ones holding the strings. His brother, the great strategist, his bride, the trained spy, and Luca, the second son, the disappointment, the allowance, smiling above them all, holding the one truth that could unmake every single one of them. Not yet, though. Let them fall in love first. It's so much more satisfying to destroy something that's happy. Luca finished his coffee, left a generous tip, and drove home to the mansion in the hills where he practiced his grief for his father in the mirror, adjusting his face until the sorrow looked real, until even he could almost believe it. In the morning, he would call his brother. He would be warm. He would ask after Sofia. He would say, "Take care of her, brother. You know I trust you above all men." And he would watch Dante's face do the small guilty thing it did now, the thing only Luca could see, and he would savour it like the finest wine in his father's cellar. The war Dante didn't know he was in had a general Dante had never suspected. It was the smiling one. It was always going to be the smiling one. They should have stopped. They both knew they should have stopped. Instead, they became careful, and careful became addicted, and addicted became a second secret life running beneath the first. They met in the places no one watched, a safe house in the desert that not even Enzo knew about, a private box at the opera in the city, dark and velvet-curtained, where Dante's hand found hers under the programme and neither of them heard a note of the music. Once, recklessly, in his car parked at the canyon where he'd first told her something true, the two of them talking until dawn about everything except the thing that would kill them. "Tell me something no one knows about you," she said one night, her head on his chest in the desert dark of the safe house, his heartbeat slow and steady under her ear. "You already know things no one knows. Tell me more." He was quiet for a while, his fingers moving idly through her hair. "I don't remember being born a Ferraro," he said finally. "I know that sounds strange, but I have this memory, from before, I must have been very small, of a different place. A room with a yellow curtain. A woman's voice, but not my mother's, not the woman I called mother. And crying. A lot of crying." His hand stilled. "My father never spoke of it. When I asked, once, he hit me so hard I didn't ask again. So I decided I imagined it. A child's dream." A pause. "But sometimes I still see the yellow curtain." Sofia lay very still against him. Something cold had moved through her at his words, though she couldn't name it. "And you? Dante said. Something no one knows. She almost told him then, the whole truth, the handler, the mission, the rival family, the reason she'd been sent into his brother's bed. It rose up in her throat, this desperate need to be known by someone before it all came apart, and she opened her mouth to destroy everything with honesty. "I lie for a living," she said. Dante's fingers resumed their slow path through her hair. "I know," he said. She went rigid. "What?" "I've known since the airport, Sofia." His voice was calm, unhurried, terrifyingly gentle. "You move like someone trained. You lie like someone who was taught. You watch exits. You memorize the account structure of my company faster than my own auditors could. You're not a Neapolitan bride sold into a marriage." His hand cupped the back of her head. "You're a spy. Someone sent you. A rival family, I'd guess. The Genovese, or someone under them. They planted you here to learn how the money moves." She couldn't breathe. She sat up in the dark, pulling away from him, her heart a fist. "If you knew," her voice shook, "if you've known this whole time, why? Why let me close? Why not have me killed?" Dante sat up, slowly. In the thin desert moonlight through the window, his face was carved and calm. "Because I understood you," he said. "The first time I looked at you, I saw myself, someone owned by a family they never chose, someone made into a weapon before they were old enough to say no, someone so alone that loneliness became the only thing they could trust." He reached out and touched her face, and she let him, trembling. "I didn't fall in love with the bride they sent, Sofia. I fell in love with the spy, with the person underneath the mission, the person no one else has ever bothered to look for." She started to cry, and she never cried. She had been trained not to cry, and the tears came anyway, hot and silent. "They'll make me report," she whispered. "My handler. He calls and I have to give him something, or they'll know I've turned. And if they know I've turned, then we give him something." Dante drew her back against him, and she came, boneless, undone. "We feed him what I choose, real enough to keep you alive, false enough to be useless. You're not their weapon anymore, Sofia. You're not Luca's bride. You're not a Marchetti or whatever name they gave you." His arms closed around her. "You're mine, and I keep what's mine alive. Do you understand? Whatever it costs, whatever I have to burn." "Why?" she wept. "Why would you do that for a liar, for a spy sent to destroy you?" "Because you're not doing it anymore." He tipped her face up to his. "The moment you didn't take his call after the stairwell, I had eyes on you, Sofia. I've had eyes on you since the airport. The moment you let that phone ring, you chose me over them. You just didn't know I was watching you choose." His mouth found hers, soft and certain. "I've been waiting for you to say it out loud. That's all. I've just been waiting for you to trust me the way I already trust you." It broke something in her. The last wall, the final lock on the last door. She kissed him back with everything she had never been allowed to feel, and out in the desert dark, the wind moved over the safe house, and for a few stolen hours, two of the most dangerous, most damaged people in the world were simply two people, in love and safe and doomed. Neither of them knew that Luca's man was parked a mile down the desert road with a long lens and a patient smile. Neither of them knew that the tape was already growing. And Sofia, lying in Dante's arms at dawn, did not know the one thing that would have changed everything. That when Dante spoke of a yellow curtain and a woman's voice that wasn't his mother's, he was describing a memory that belonged, in a way neither of them could imagine, to her. The commission demanded a spectacle, and Luca gave them one. The engagement party for Dante Ferraro and Sofia Marchetti filled the grand ballroom of the Ferraro Grand with 500 guests, capos and their wives, senators on the family's payroll, judges, movie producers, the whole gilded ecosystem that a river of clean money could buy. Chandeliers dripped light. A 40-piece orchestra played, and at the centre of it all stood Luca, radiant, charming, his arm around the woman his brother loved, playing the happiest man in the world. Sofia wore white. It felt like a shroud. "Smile, Gara," Luca murmured, steering her through the crowd, his hand warm at the small of her back. "The whole world is watching us tonight. The great alliance, the beautiful couple." He kissed her temple, and across the room she felt Dante's attention find them and hold. A heat she could locate in any room now, with her eyes closed. "My brother is watching too," Luca added, so softly she almost missed it. "Isn't he always?" Sofia's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "Only that he takes his duties seriously, watching over you, as I asked." Luca's smile did not change, but his eyes did, just for a flicker. "You've grown close, the two of you. I'm glad. Family should be close." He handed her a glass of champagne. "Very close." He knew. The thought arrived with such certainty that she nearly dropped the glass. She looked at his smiling profile, and she knew, the way a spy knows, the way prey knows. Luca Ferraro knew about the stairwell, the safe house, all of it, and he was standing here in front of 500 people telling her so and smiling and enjoying it. She excused herself. She found Dante on the mezzanine, alone, a black shape against the light, watching the party like a general surveying a field he expected to bury men in. "He knows," she breathed. "Dante, Luca knows about us. He just told me. Not in words, but he told me. He was toying with me. I know." Dante didn't look at her. Looking at her here was dangerous, and he had gone very still. "I've suspected for a week. My brother has been too warm. He only gets warm when he's about to bite. Then it's over. He'll expose us. The commission is here, Dante. Half the families in the country are in that room. He could stand up right now, and he won't." Dante's voice was flat and certain. "Not tonight. Not yet. If Luca knew and wanted me dead, he'd have done it already. Quietly. Cleanly. An accident in the desert. He hasn't. Which means he's not ready. Which means he wants something bigger than my death." Now Dante did turn, just his eyes, dark and calculating. "He wants everything. The empire. My seat. And to take it clean, in front of the commission, he needs the whole thing airtight, witnessed, undeniable. He's not going to spring the trap until it's perfect. "So we run," Sofia said. "Tonight we disappear and prove him right to every family in that room. A Ferraro who runs is a Ferraro who's guilty. They'd hunt us to the ends of the earth and call it honor." Dante shook his head. "No, we don't run. We turn it around." "How?" "I don't know yet." For the first time, she saw the strain under his stone, the exhaustion of a man fighting a war on 3 fronts, the commission circling his father's empty throne, a rival family with a spy in his bed, and now his own brother, smiling, patient, holding a knife. "But I know my brother. He's smart, Sofia. Smarter than anyone gives him credit for. And he's been planning this longer than I've been alive, I think. Since we were boys. He's always wanted to be me." A bitter thing crossed his face. "He can have the casinos. He can have the seat. I'd hand him all of it tonight if it kept you breathing. But he doesn't just want the throne. He wants me destroyed, humiliated. He wants me on my knees in front of everyone who ever respected me. And then he wants me dead. And I can't give him that. Because if I'm on my knees, I can't protect you." Below them, the orchestra swung into a waltz, and Luca appeared at the centre of the floor, holding up his hands for silence. 500 faces turned to him, glowing. "Friends!" Luca called, his voice carrying, warm and golden. "Family! Thank you for being here to celebrate love." A ripple of applause. "In these hard days, with my father barely in the ground, love is what holds us together. Blood is what holds us together." His eyes lifted, unerring, to the mezzanine, to his brother and his bride, standing in the shadows above. "There is no bond stronger than blood, is there, Dante?" He raised his glass toward the darkness where they stood. "To my brother, who has taken such good care of my bride." 500 glasses lifted toward the shadows. "To Dante," the room echoed, and the applause washed up like a wave, and in the darkness above them, Sofia felt Dante's hand find hers, hidden, fierce, and grip it hard enough to bruise. "He's telling us," she whispered, terror and fury and something like awe all at once. "He's telling us he's going to win. He's telling us he thinks he's already won," Dante said, and his voice had gone cold and clear and deadly, the voice of the man his father had found fighting bigger boys in the street. "That's his mistake. That's always been his mistake. My brother celebrates too early." His grip tightened on her hand. "We're going to let him keep celebrating. Right up until the moment I take everything he loves and burn it down in front of him." Below, Luca smiled up at the darkness and drank. Sofia's handler wanted a meeting, and a refusal would have been a confession, so she went. The instructions came the usual way, the number with no name, an address, a time. A parking garage on the edge of the city, level 4. And she drove there alone in a car Dante's men had swept for trackers, though she'd told Dante only that she was going to see her handler and not where, because some instinct she didn't examine made her want to keep one small piece of the danger to herself, to protect him from it, the way he was always protecting her. The man was waiting by a concrete pillar. She had met him perhaps 6 times in her life. He had no name she knew, only the voice and the ownership. He was older, grey, unremarkable, the kind of man you'd never look at twice which was exactly why he was so good at what he did. "You've gone quiet," he said, without greeting. 2 weeks? Almost nothing. A few account numbers, a courier route we already knew. "The family is displeased, Sofia. We didn't spend 12 years raising you to send us scraps. It's not that simple. The old man died. Everything's locked down. Dante trusts no one." "Dante." The handler's eyes sharpened on her. "You call him Dante now, not the elder son. Dante." He let the silence work. "You're supposed to be marrying the younger one. I'm gathering intelligence. Getting close to the family means getting close to all of them." "Does it?" The handler studied her for a long, cold moment, and Sofia understood with a plunging certainty that she had already failed, that he could see it on her, the way Dante had seen the spy under the bride. This man had trained her. He knew every tell she had. "Let me tell you what I think, Sofia. I think you've forgotten yourself. I think the Ferraros have gotten into your blood, the way I warned you they would. So let me remind you why you're here." He took out a photograph and held it up in the dim garage light. A woman, young, dark-haired, laughing on a beach somewhere, a Naples sky behind her. Beautiful. Sofia's breath caught, because she knew this face. She had spent her whole life trying to remember this face. "Your mother," the handler said. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was barely there. "You never knew how she died, did you? We told you she got sick. We let you believe that." He lowered the photograph. "She didn't get sick, Sofia. She was murdered. 19 years ago in Naples, by the Ferraro family, on the orders of Salvatore Ferraro himself." He watched the words hit her, watched them detonate. "Your mother had something the Ferraros wanted buried. So they buried her. And then they took you. A loose end, a child who might someday ask questions, and they were going to bury you too. We got to you first. We saved you, Sofia. We raised you. We made you strong. And in return, we asked for one thing. That when the time came, you would help us take everything from the family that took everything from you." His voice dropped, soft and vicious. "And now you're calling the murderer's son by his first name and sending us scraps." Sofia stood in the concrete dark, the world tilting under her. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Salvatore, Dante's father, he wouldn't." "Wouldn't he? You've heard the stories. You know what that man was." The handler stepped closer. "Ask your Dante. Ask him what his father did in Naples 19 years ago. Ask him about the woman they killed and the child they hunted. Watch his face when you say it." He tucked the photograph back into his coat. "Or don't. Marry the golden brother. Play house with the killer. And know that every day you spend loving a Ferraro is a day you spit on your mother's grave." He turned to go, then paused. "You have 1 week. Give us something real. The commission ledger, the account keys, something that ends them. Or we'll assume you've turned. And you know what happens to assets who turn." He walked into the shadows and was gone, and Sofia stood alone in the garage for a long time, shaking, her mother's laughing face burning behind her eyes. She drove back to the city with the radio off and her hands cold on the wheel. Everything she'd believed had been a lie. She'd always known that. She was a professional liar. She'd assumed her own history was a construction too. But this, her mother, murdered, by Dante's blood, by the empire she now lay awake wanting to save, because the man who ran it held her like she was made of glass. She should hate him, the son of the man who murdered her mother. Every principle of revenge she'd been raised on demanded it. But she thought of the yellow curtain. He had described it in the safe house. A room with a yellow curtain, a woman's voice that wasn't his mother's, crying, a memory from before he was a Ferraro. And Sofia, who remembered almost nothing of her earliest childhood, found herself gripping the wheel harder because a fragment had surfaced, unbidden, from the deepest dark of her own memory. A room, and light coming yellow through a curtain, and a woman singing in Neapolitan, and a small boy crying somewhere close by, a boy she had reached for. No, impossible. A trick of grief. She was making connections out of pain, the way traumatized people do. But that night she couldn't sleep, and she took out her own oldest secret. A locket she'd carried since before she could remember, the one thing that was truly hers, that no family had given her. And she opened it. And inside was a photograph so old and faded she'd never been able to make out the faces. 2 children, a girl and a boy. And behind them, out of focus, so faint she'd never noticed it in 20 years of looking, a yellow curtain. She didn't tell him about the locket. Not yet. She couldn't. It was too large, too impossible, a crack in the foundation of the world that she needed to be wrong about before she could ever speak it aloud. But she asked him the other thing. She had to. They were in his penthouse, the one place she was not supposed to be, in the deep hours after midnight when even the desert seemed to sleep. He'd cooked for her, badly, endearingly, a man who commanded an empire and could barely manage pasta. And they'd eaten on the floor by the windows with the whole burning city beneath them. And for an hour she'd let herself pretend they were ordinary people with an ordinary future. Then she set down her wine and said, "Dante, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Even if it's ugly, especially if it's ugly." He went still, the way he did. "You want the truth," he said slowly. "About what?" "About your father." Sofia's heart hammered, but her voice held. "About Naples, 19 years ago." She watched his face the way her handler had told her to. "Did your father ever have a woman killed there? A young woman, dark hair, someone who had something he wanted buried?" The city burned silent below them. Dante did not answer right away, and the not answering was its own answer, and she felt something in her chest begin to crack. "Where did you hear that?" he said finally. "Does it matter? Is it true?" He rose and walked to the window, his back to her, a black shape against the neon. When he spoke, his voice had gone flat and far away, the voice of a man reciting an old wound. "My father did many things in Naples," he said. "Most of them worse than you can imagine. I stopped counting the bodies when I was 15. So, could he have killed a woman? Yes, he killed many. Did he kill that woman, the one you're asking about?" He turned. "I don't know, Sofia. I was 13 years old. I wasn't in his confidence yet. But I'll tell you what I do know, because you asked me not to spare you." He came back and sat across from her, close, his dark eyes finding hers and holding them. "There was a woman in Naples," he said, "when I was young. I don't know her name. But I remember there was a period, I must have been 12, 13, when my father was in a fury for weeks. Something had gone wrong. Someone had betrayed him or threatened him or knew something. And there was a woman at the centre of it. And then there wasn't. She was simply gone, and no one spoke of her, and my father slept badly for a year. He paused. I remember because it was the only time I ever saw him afraid. And it was over a woman. And a child. Sofia had stopped breathing. A child? There was a child. I heard the men talk about it once, when they didn't know I was listening. The woman's dealt with, but there's still the kid. I remember it because it frightened me. I was a child too, and men in my house were talking about a child the way they talked about a debt. Dante's jaw tightened. I never learned what happened to it. I told myself it was nothing. A boy tells himself a lot of things to keep living in a house like mine. Sofia's hand had risen to her chest, to where the locket lay hidden under her dress, warm against her skin. Sofia? Dante's voice sharpened with concern. You've gone white. Who asked you to ask me this? Who told you about Naples? She should have lied. She was a professional liar. Instead, she reached up, unclasped the chain, and drew the locket out into the light between them. This is the only thing that's truly mine, she said, her voice unsteady. I've had it since before I can remember, before the family took me. No one gave it to me. I already had it. It's the one thing they couldn't erase, because I wouldn't let go of it, even as a child. They told me it was worthless. She opened it with trembling fingers and held it out to him. Look at the photograph. Look behind the children. Dante took the locket. He was a man who had held guns and gold and the throats of his enemies, and his hands, she saw, were not entirely steady. He looked at the faded photograph. 2 children, a girl and a boy, and behind them, faint, out of focus, so easy to miss, a yellow curtain. She watched the colour leave his face. She watched the empire drain out of him, and leave only the boy who remembered a room he'd been told he imagined. Where did you get this? He whispered. I told you. It's always been mine. This curtain. His thumb touched the tiny faded image. I know this curtain. Sofia, I know this room. The yellow curtain. I told you in the safe house. The memory from before, the one my father beat me for asking about. His voice broke. Something she had never heard, this unbreakable man breaking. How do you have a photograph of a room I remember from before I was a Ferraro? I don't know, she wept. I don't know, Dante. I've been asking myself the same thing since last night, and I can't. It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. He looked up from the locket to her face, and she watched him do the thing he did to everything, the terrible cold arithmetic, the strategist's mind assembling pieces into a picture, and she watched him arrive somewhere she was too afraid to follow. My father found me, Dante said slowly, when I was 6. That's the story. He found me fighting in the street and took me in. But I have memories from before 6. The yellow curtain, a woman singing and crying, always crying, another child crying close by. His eyes were fixed on her, wide and dark and afraid. A child I reached for. Stop, Sofia breathed. You told me your mother sang to you in Neapolitan, old, sad songs, that you can't remember the words. His hand closed around the locket. Sofia, What if we weren't strangers before all this? What if— Stop! She was crying now in earnest, because the impossible thing was assembling itself in front of her too, and she could not bear it, could not bear what it would mean about the nights in the safe house, the stairwell, the way he held her face like glass. Please, it's not possible. It can't be. Why not? His voice was raw. Why is it the one thing in this world of lies that can't be true? Because I love you, she cried. And it was the first time either of them had said the word aloud, and it landed in the room like a body. Because if that's true, then everything we've done— Dante went absolutely silent. And then, because he was who he was, because he faced every terror head-on, the way he'd faced bigger boys in the street, he set the locket down very carefully between them and said in a voice scraped down to nothing, "Then we find out. Whatever it is. We find out the truth, together, before anyone else can use it against us, because I promise you, Sofia, someone already knows. Someone is holding this over both of us, and I would rather cut out my own heart than let it be a weapon in Luca's hands, or your handler's, or anyone's." He took her face in his hands, gentle, desperate. We find the truth. And then, whatever it is, we survive it. The way we've survived everything. Together. Do you hear me? She nodded against his hands, weeping, and outside the city burned on, indifferent to the two people at its summit, who had just glimpsed the edge of a secret large enough to damn them or save them, and did not yet know which. The truth, Dante knew, was written down somewhere. His father had been a monster, but he had been a meticulous monster. Salvatore Ferraro wrote everything down, buried everything in ledgers and files and safe deposit boxes, because in their world, information was the only true wealth, and paper never forgot. There's an archive, Dante told her the next morning. He hadn't slept, neither had she, in Naples, under the old family compound in the hills above the bay. My father kept records there that even the American families never saw, the real history, the debts, the bodies, the things worth killing over. If there's a truth about you and me, about Naples 19 years ago, it's there. Then we go to Naples, Sofia said. It's not that simple. If I fly to Naples now, days after taking the throne, with my brother's fiancée, the Commission will ask why. Luca will ask why. Everyone will ask why. Dante paced the length of the penthouse, and Luca controls the Naples operation. Papa gave me the empire, but he gave Luca the old country, the compound, the archive, the men on the ground. If I want to get into that archive, I have to get past my own brother's people. So we make a reason to go. Sofia's spy training was surfacing, cold and useful. Something the Commission expects, something Luca can't refuse. Dante stopped pacing. A slow, dangerous light came into his eyes. "The wedding," he said. "What?" "Your wedding. To Luca. It's supposed to happen in the spring, but there's an old tradition. The Marchetti and Ferraro families are both Neapolitan. A wedding of this importance, sealing an alliance this old, should be blessed in Naples, at the family church, where both bloodlines were baptized." He was moving now, the strategist assembling. If I propose moving the wedding to Naples, bringing the whole family home, doing it properly, honouring the old ways, the Commission will love it. The traditionalists will love it, and Luca can't refuse without looking like he's afraid of his ancestral home. He looked at her. It gets us both to Naples. It gets us into the compound, and it buys us time inside the one place the archive exists. Sofia stared at him. You want to plan my wedding to your brother, as a cover, to find out if I'm your sister. When you say it out loud, it sounds insane. It is insane, Dante. Everything about us is insane. He crossed to her and took her hands. But it's the only door I can see. And Sofia, we have to know. Not just for us. Whoever gave your handler that photograph of your mother, whoever fed Luca whatever he's holding, someone is assembling this secret to use it. If it detonates in the open, in front of the commission, we're both dead. The affair alone is a death sentence. But if it turns out we're... He couldn't finish it either. We need to hold the truth first. Whoever holds the truth holds the power. That's the only law my father ever really believed in. So they went to war by planning a wedding. Dante proposed it to the commission through Enzo, and it landed exactly as he'd predicted. The old dons wept about tradition, about the honour of bringing the alliance home to Naples, about young Salvatore's memory being blessed in the church where he was baptized. Within a week, it was decided. The Ferraro family would sail home. The wedding of Luca and Sofia would be held in Naples, in the old church, in 6 weeks' time, and the entire American operation would relocate for the season to the compound in the hills. Luca agreed. That was the part that made Dante's skin crawl. He'd expected resistance. Naples was Luca's territory, his one true power base, and inviting his brother onto it should have alarmed him. Instead, Luca had smiled that golden smile and said, "What a beautiful idea, Dante. Home. The three of us, together, where it all began. I couldn't have planned it better myself. I couldn't have planned it better myself." Dante turned the phrase over for days, because Luca said nothing by accident, and the more Dante examined it, the more it sounded not like agreement, but like a man watching his own trap spring exactly on schedule. "He wants us in Naples," Dante told Sofia the night before they flew. They were in the safe house one last time, the desert dark around them. "He agreed too easily. He's not letting us come home. He's bringing us home. For his own reasons." "Then we're walking into his ground." "Yes. His men, his compound, his archive." Sofia lay in the crook of his arm, staring at the ceiling. "Dante, what if the truth we're looking for is the truth he's already holding? What if he knows what we are before we do?" Dante was silent for a long moment. He'd thought the same thing, and it terrified him more than any gun ever had. "Then we get to it first," he said. "We're two of the most dangerous people either family has ever produced, Sofia. I run the largest criminal empire in America. You were trained by a rival family to bring it down from the inside. Between us, we've never lost a game we both decided to win." He turned her face to his. "So we decide to win this one. We find the truth in that archive before Luca can use his version, and then, whatever it is, we survive it," she finished. "Together. Together." They flew to Naples the next morning, the whole gilded, murderous family, home to the old country, to the church and the compound and the archive and the bay glittering blue beneath the ruined slopes of Vesuvius. Sofia looked down at the ancient city as the plane descended, and felt something she had no name for, a pull in her blood, as if the land itself remembered her. She did not know how right that feeling was. She did not know that somewhere in that city, 19 years ago, a dark-haired woman had sung Neapolitan lullabies to two small children behind a yellow curtain, a girl and a boy, before the Ferraros came and tore the world in half. Naples received them like returning royalty and hidden enemies, which is to say, with feasts and knives. The compound stood in the hills above the bay, an ancient villa, ochre-walled and cypress-guarded, that had belonged to the Ferraro family for 4 generations. It had seen weddings and funerals and executions, and it wore all of them in its bones. Sofia stood on the terrace her first evening and looked down at the impossible blue of the bay, at Vesuvius smoking faintly on the horizon, at the tumbling ancient city where she had been born and could not remember, and she felt the past pressing up against her like a hand. "It's beautiful," she said, when Dante found her there. "It's a graveyard with a view," he said. "But yes, it's beautiful." They could not be seen alone together here. The compound was full of Luca's men, and eyes were everywhere. So they had learned to speak in the open, in the flat, dead voices of near strangers, saying real things in a tone that meant nothing. "The archive is below the chapel," Dante murmured, looking out at the bay, his voice pitched for her alone. "There's an old crypt. Behind it, a steel door my father put in 30 years ago. I have a key. I've always had a key. He gave it to me when he made me his heir. But the lock's been changed. Recently. Luca. Which means he's been in it. Which means whatever's down there, he's already seen it." Dante's jaw tightened. "There's a locksmith in the city who owes the family everything. I'll get him to the door in 3 nights, during the betrothal feast, when the whole compound is drunk and watching the fireworks. You'll need to keep Luca occupied." "I'm his fiancée. Keeping him occupied is my whole job." "Sofia." Something raw crossed Dante's face, quickly buried. "I hate this. I hate every second of watching you on his arm. I know it's necessary. I know it's the game, but there's a part of me." He stopped. "There's a part of me that wants to put a bullet in my own brother every time he touches you, and I've had to learn to stand still and smile. So don't tell me it's just a job. It's the hardest thing I've ever done." She wanted to touch him. She curled her hands around the stone balustrade instead. "When this is over," she said quietly to the bay, "when we know the truth, whatever it is, I want to stand next to you in the daylight, just once, where anyone can see. I've spent my whole life being someone's secret, yours, my handler's, my mother's. I want to be someone's out loud." Dante was silent for a long moment. "You will be," he said. "I swear it on the only thing I have left to swear on. You will stand next to me in the daylight, and anyone who has a problem with it will answer to me." A pause. "Even if the truth is the worst thing it could be, even then, Sofia, I'll find a way for us to be out loud. There's always a way. My father taught me that. There's always a way if you're willing to burn enough to reach it." That night, Luca held a small dinner, just the 3 of them, at his insistence, in the old dining room where their father had eaten 10,000 meals. Candlelight, ancient wine from the family cellar, and Luca, radiant, at the head of the table where the head of the family sat, though the head of the family was his brother. "To home," Luca toasted, lifting his glass. "To the 3 of us. Together at last, where it all began. His eyes moved between them, warm and terrible. You know, I've been thinking about our childhoods. Dante, do you remember much of yours before Papa found you? The question dropped into the room like a stone into a well. Not much, Dante said evenly. I was young. 6, wasn't it? When he found you fighting in the street. Luca swirled his wine. It's strange, isn't it, having a brother whose life started at 6, as if you were born the day Papa picked you up. I used to be jealous of it when we were boys. Dante the chosen one, the one Papa went out and selected, while I was just born, ordinary, inevitable. He smiled. But lately I've become curious about where you came from, about those first 6 years no one talks about. Sofia's blood had gone to ice. She kept her face smooth, the training holding, but under the table her hand found Dante's knee and gripped it in warning. There's nothing to be curious about, Dante said. I was a street kid. Papa took me in. That's the whole story. Is it? Luca set down his glass. For one instant the golden warmth fell away entirely, and something ancient and hungry looked out of his eyes. And then it was gone, buried under charm, and he laughed. Of course it is. Listen to me getting sentimental. It's this house. It makes ghosts of us all. He raised his glass again. Forget I asked. To home, to family, to blood. His eyes locked on Sofia's as he said the last word and did not let go. The bond that can never be broken. Isn't that right, cara? That's right, Sofia said, and drank, and tasted nothing. Later, alone in her room, she took out the locket and looked at the 2 faded children behind the yellow curtain, and she understood with a cold clarity that terrified her. Luca knew. Not everything, perhaps, but he knew about the first 6 years. He knew there was a secret in Dante's origins, and he was circling it, savouring it, saving it, the same way he was saving whatever he knew about the affair. Luca wasn't hunting for a weapon. Luca already had 2 of them, and he'd brought them all home to Naples, to the exact ground where the secrets were buried, so that when he finally struck, it would be here, where it began, perfect, complete, and impossible to survive. The betrothal feast blazed. The whole compound had turned out for it. 200 guests, capos and cousins, and the great extended body of 2 ancient families, tables groaning under Neapolitan feast food, wine running like the bay itself, and at midnight the fireworks began over the water, great blooming flowers of light that pulled every face upward and every eye away from the chapel on the far side of the grounds. Sofia stood beside Luca on the main terrace, his arm around her waist, and played her part. You're beautiful tonight, Luca murmured, watching the fireworks paint her face. Nervous, though. Your hands are cold. He caught one and pressed it to his lips. Are you afraid, cara? Brides are meant to be afraid, they tell me. Afraid of the new life, the new family, all those new loyalties. A little, she said, giving him the truth to hide the truth. It's a lot, your world, your family, our family, soon. He turned her to face him, the fireworks flowering behind his golden head. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, because we're going to be married, and there should be no lies between husband and wife. His smile never wavered. "Do you love my brother?" The world stopped. Sofia's training held her face still through sheer violence of will. What a strange question. Is it? You've spent a great deal of time together. He's a compelling man, my brother. Cold, but compelling. Women find the coldness a challenge. Luca studied her, delighted, patient, a cat with a mouse it had no intention of eating quickly. "I only ask because I want us to start clean." "So, do you love him?" "I love you," Sofia said, and made herself mean it, made her whole trained body sell it. "I'm marrying you, in 6 weeks, in your family's church." Luca looked at her for a long, long moment, the fireworks reflected in his eyes, and then he smiled, a real smile, almost tender, almost sad. "You know," he said softly, "you're a very good liar, Sofia. Truly. One of the best I've ever seen. I mean that as the highest compliment." He kissed her forehead. "It's going to make what's coming so much more interesting." And he turned back to the fireworks, still holding her, and said nothing more. Across the grounds, in the dark behind the chapel, Dante and the locksmith worked by the light of the exploding sky. The crypt was cold and ancient, the air thick with the dust of 150 years of Ferraro dead. Marble slabs lined the walls, carved with names Dante had grown up hearing spoken, like prayers and curses. At the far end, behind the oldest tomb, was the steel door. "The lock's German," the locksmith whispered, sweating despite the chill, his tools glinting. "New, good, but not good enough. Give me 10 minutes." It took 8. The door swung open onto a small stone room, climate-controlled, lined with steel shelves, his father's true archive, the buried heart of the empire. Ledgers going back 4 generations, photographs, documents in fireproof boxes, the recorded sins of a bloodline. "Wait outside," Dante told the locksmith. "Watch the crypt stairs. If anyone comes, you never saw me." Alone, Dante began to search. He knew his father's mind. Salvatore organized everything by year, and the year Dante needed was carved into his memory. 19 years ago, the year of the woman and the child, the year Dante was 13 and saw his father afraid. His hands were not steady as he pulled the box. Inside were documents, photographs, a Naples police file that had clearly been bought and buried, and a single sealed envelope, thick, his father's handwriting on the front in faded ink. "To be read by my heir and no one else. The truth of the boy." Dante's blood roared in his ears. He opened it, and as the fireworks thundered overhead and Sofia lied for her life on the terrace and Luca smiled his patient smile, Dante Ferraro read the truth of himself by the light of a single bulb in the buried heart of his father's empire, and the world he had built his entire identity upon, quietly, completely, came apart. The first page was a confession. "If you are reading this, I am dead, and you are my heir. So you must have the truth, because a man cannot rule from a foundation of lies, and I have let you rule from one for 26 years. You are not my son. You are not a Ferraro by blood." Dante's hands shook so hard the paper rattled. 19 years ago, there was a woman in Naples. Her name was Rosa. She was the mistress of my greatest rival, Don Battista Grasso, head of the family that had warred with ours for 30 years. Rosa was more than a mistress. She kept Battista's secrets, his accounts, his ledgers, and she came to me in secret and offered to betray him, to hand me everything in exchange for one thing: protection for her children. She had two, a girl and a boy. Battista's children, though he never claimed them, never knew the girl even existed. Rosa had hidden the daughter away, terrified of what Battista would do to a female heir who could someday challenge his sons. The boy Battista knew of and neglected. I agreed. God forgive me, I agreed. And then I betrayed her. When I had Battista's secrets, I no longer needed Rosa, and a woman who would betray one Don would betray another. So I had her killed. Dante could not breathe. But the children. I looked at those two children, the girl no more than 4, the boy 6, and something in me that I did not know still lived refused to let them be killed too. So I took the boy. I raised him as my own. I called him Dante, after my own dead father, and I made him my heir. And he became the finest man this family ever produced, and I have never for one day regretted it, though I have never once been able to tell him. You are that boy, Dante. You are the son of Rosa, and of Don Battista Grasso, my oldest enemy. You are not my blood. And the girl. The page ended. Dante turned it with numb fingers, and the fireworks reached their thundering climax over the bay, and the last page of his father's confession lay before him in the dim electric light. And the girl, his father's letter continued, I could not take. 2 children appearing in my house would have raised questions I could not answer. One orphan boy from the streets was a story people believed. 2 was a scandal. So I let the girl go. I paid a woman to take her far from Naples, to raise her, to keep her hidden. I told myself she would be safe. I told myself I had saved one and spared the other. It was the closest thing to mercy I had in me. I lost track of her for years, but I am a careful man, Dante, and I never truly lose track of anything. I found her again, eventually. The rival family, the one that once served Battista, the ones who have hated us for a generation, found her too, and took her, and raised her into a weapon, though they never knew what she truly was. They thought her only an orphan they could shape. They did not know she was Battista Grasso's hidden daughter. They did not know she was your sister. Her name, when I last found her, was Sofia. The letter fell from Dante's hands. He stood alone in the buried room beneath the chapel, the fireworks fading over the bay above, and he understood everything at once, the whole monstrous architecture of it, and he thought he might be sick. Sofia was Rosa's daughter, Battista Grasso's daughter, the girl behind the yellow curtain, the child he'd reached for in his oldest memory, the crying he'd never been able to explain. His sister. Not by adoption, not by the accident of 2 boys raised in one house, by blood. The same mother, the same monstrous father, the same room, the same yellow curtain, the same lullabies in Neapolitan that neither of them could fully remember. Sofia was his sister. He gripped the steel shelf to stay upright. Every night in the safe house, the stairwell, the way he'd held her face like glass, the word she'd finally said, "Because I love you," and the word he'd been about to say back, his sister. And then cutting through the horror like a cold blade, the strategist in him, the part his father had forged, the part that never stopped calculating, even at the end of the world, seized on the other truth buried in the same confession, the truth that changed everything a second time. He was not a Ferraro. He was Battista Grasso's son. He had no Ferraro blood at all. And Luca, who had spent his whole life tormented by being the second son, the born one, the ordinary one. Luca was Salvatore's true and only blood. Luca was the real heir. Luca had always been the real heir. And Salvatore, knowing it, had given the empire to the adopted son of his dead enemy anyway, because that son was stronger, because that son was better. If Luca knew this, and Dante was suddenly sickeningly certain that he did, then Luca's entire war made a different kind of sense. This wasn't just ambition. This was a true son who'd been passed over for a stranger, an impostor, the child of the family's greatest enemy. In Luca's eyes, Dante wasn't just a rival. Dante was a usurper with no right to anything, a cuckoo in the nest, the son of the man who'd tried to destroy them all. And Sofia. If Luca knew about Dante's origins, did he know about Sofia's? Did he know she was Grasso's daughter too? Did he know? Dante's mind reeled. Luca had asked Sofia at the feast, "Do you love my brother?" Luca had been circling the affair for weeks, saving it. But the affair was a death sentence only because Sofia was Luca's fiancée. If Luca revealed instead that Dante and Sofia shared blood, that they were brother and sister, then it wasn't merely a betrayal of family honour. It was incest, the oldest and most absolute taboo of all. Exposed in front of the commission, it wouldn't just destroy Dante, it would make him a monster beyond forgiveness, beyond even the mercy of a quick death. "It's going to make what's coming so much more interesting," Luca had said. "I couldn't have planned it better myself." Dante understood now. Luca hadn't merely allowed the affair. Somewhere, somehow, Luca had engineered it. "The tour. Luca asked me to show you the city. Keeping them close. Take care of her. Keep her close. Bringing them home to Naples, to the exact ground where the proof was buried." Luca had known what Dante and Sofia were to each other from the beginning, and he had thrown them together, watched them fall, let them build the very affair that would damn them, because an affair between a man and his brother's fiancée could be survived, could be denied, could even be quietly forgiven. But an affair between a brother and sister, revealed with proof in front of the entire commission, could destroy Dante so completely that no one would ever question Luca's right to take everything. Luca hadn't set a trap for a rival, he'd set a trap for a monster. And then he'd spent months, lovingly, patiently, making sure the monster fell in love, so that the fall would be as complete and as agonizing as possible. Dante stood in the buried dark and felt something he had not felt since he was a child in a room with a yellow curtain. Pure, helpless grief. For his father, who had loved him and lied to him. For himself, who was no one he'd thought he was. And, above all, drowning everything else, for Sofia. For the woman he loved, who was his sister, who was up on the terrace right now, lying for her life on the arm of the brother who meant to destroy them both. She didn't know. She was still searching, still hoping the truth would be something they could survive. And Dante held it now, the whole terrible truth. And he had to decide. in the buried heart of a dead man's empire, with the fireworks dying overhead, whether to tell her. He gathered the pages. He put them inside his jacket, against his heart. He wiped the shelf, closed the box, and left the archive exactly as he'd found it, because whatever came next, he would not let Luca know that Dante now knew what Luca knew. Information was the only true wealth. Whoever held the truth held the power. Dante climbed out of the crypt into the fading light of the fireworks, his face a mask of stone, his heart in ruins, and went to find the only family he had left in the world, and lie to her one more time, to keep her alive. He did not tell her that night. He could not. He found her on the terrace after the guests had thinned, after Luca had drifted off to hold court with the Capos over grappa, and he stood beside her at the balustrade, the way a brother-in-law might, looking out at the black bay where the last firework smoke still hung. "Did you find it?" she whispered, not looking at him. "No," Dante lied. "The box for that year was empty. Someone got there first." He felt her flinch, felt the disappointment and the fear move through her. "Luca," she breathed. "Maybe. I don't know." Each lie was a stone he laid on his own chest. "We'll keep looking. There are other records, other places." He couldn't do it. He'd stood in the crypt and rehearsed the words. "Sofia, we are brother and sister. We share a mother. We share the monster who fathered us." And he could not make them real, could not take the one good thing either of them had ever had and turn it into the worst thing in the world with a sentence. Not tonight. Not with Luca 50 feet away, waiting for exactly this, waiting for the truth to shatter them so he could sweep up the pieces. She turned to look at him, and there was something in her face, a searching, a fear, that told him she sensed the lie. "Dante," she said slowly, "you're not telling me something." "I'm telling you everything I found." "That's not the same thing." She stepped closer, dropping her voice below the reach of any listener. "I know you. I've learned you. Something happened down there. Your face is different. You look like—" She stopped. "You look like a man at a funeral." "I am always at a funeral," he said, which was true, which was the most honest thing he'd said all night. "It's this house. You said it yourself. It makes ghosts of us all." She didn't believe him. He could see she didn't believe him. But she also saw that he wouldn't be moved tonight, and she was too smart to press with the enemy in earshot. "Whatever it is," she said quietly, "we agreed. Together. You don't get to carry it alone, Dante. That was the promise." "I know." "Then when?" He looked at her, at the face he'd held like glass, at the eyes he'd stared into in the dark of 100 stolen hours, at his sister, at the only person he'd ever loved. And he made a decision that would cost him everything. "Soon," he said, "when it's safe, when we're away from him. I promise you, Sofia, I will tell you everything, but not here, not tonight. Trust me one more time." She searched his face for a long moment, then she nodded, because she did trust him, because he was the only person in the world she trusted, which made the lie the cruelest thing he had ever done. That night Dante did not sleep. He sat in the dark of his room in his father's house and read the confession again and again until he'd memorized every damning word, and he made himself think coldly, strategically, the way Salvatore had trained him, because sentiment would get them both killed, and calculation was the only love he had left to give her. The facts laid bare. He and Sofia were siblings. Blood. That was fixed and could not be changed. He was not a Ferraro. He had no legitimate claim to the empire. Luca was the true heir. That was fixed too. Luca knew both of these things, or at least the first, about Dante's origins, and had orchestrated the affair to expose them, to destroy Dante utterly in front of the commission and take everything as the rightful blood son. Sofia's rival family, the ones who'd raised her, did not know she was Grasso's daughter. They thought her merely an orphan weapon. But they'd shown her a photograph of her murdered mother and pointed her at the Ferraros for revenge. If they ever learned who she truly was, Grasso's hidden heir, they would either kill her as a threat or crown her as a claim to Grasso's old territory. Either way, she'd be a pawn in a war she never chose. And underneath all of it, the truth that made Dante's cold strategist's mind go still with something like awe. The final twist was not that they were doomed. The final twist was that they were free. Because Dante was Grasso's son, not Salvatore's, and Sofia was Grasso's daughter, they were not Ferraros, neither of them. The whole taboo that hung over them, the brother's fiancé, the family honour, the death sentence, was built on the assumption that Sofia belonged to the Ferraro bloodline through Luca, that Dante belonged to it through Salvatore. But they didn't, not by blood. The Ferraro name was a costume both of them had been forced to wear. And the incest taboo, the monstrous one, the one Luca meant to weaponize, Dante turned it over and over in the dark and found, to his horror and his desperate, treacherous hope, that even it was not as simple as it seemed. Because there was a question buried in his father's letter that Salvatore had not answered. The letter said Rosa had 2 children, a girl and a boy, both Battistas. But Dante remembered the exact wording. The boy Battista knew of. The girl he never knew existed. Rosa had hidden the daughter. Why hide a daughter so completely? Why the terror? Unless the girl was not Battista's at all. Unless Rosa had hidden her because she was another man's child. A child that would have gotten Rosa killed if Battista ever learned of her. Dante sat up in the dark, his heart pounding. He needed the rest of the archive. The letter was Salvatore's confession, but Salvatore was a careful man who documented everything, and somewhere in that buried room there would be more. The police file, the paid woman's records, the proof of exactly whose daughter Sofia was. He had read the confession and stopped. He had not searched the rest of the box. He had to go back down, and this time he understood with cold certainty Luca would be waiting for him. Because Luca had brought them all to Naples for precisely this. And a man who planned as patiently as his brother would not leave the last door unwatched. Luca was waiting in the crypt. Dante had gone down before dawn, 3 nights after the feast, moving through the sleeping compound like a shadow. And when he descended the crypt stairs and rounded the oldest tomb, the steel door of the archive stood open, and light spilled out of it, and his brother sat inside on a wooden stool with a glass of grappa in one hand and a pistol resting easy on his knee. "I wondered how long it would take you," Luca said. "I've been sleeping badly, waiting." "You always did move faster than I expected. Come in, brother, sit." We have so much to talk about. Dante did not reach for his own weapon. He knew, with the animal certainty of a man raised among killers, that Luca had men on the crypt stairs above, that this room had been the destination all along, that everything, the tour, the closeness, the wedding, Naples, had been a road leading precisely here. "You read it," Dante said. "Papa's letter." "Years ago." Luca smiled and sipped his grappa. "You think I didn't know what was in this room? I've had Naples since I was 22. Papa gave you the empire and gave me the graveyard, and he thought that was a mercy to you and an insult to me. But the graveyard is where the truth is buried, Dante. I've known who you are for 6 years. He leaned forward, and the charm fell away, and what was underneath it was 6 years of patient, cultivated hatred. You're nothing. You're the bastard son of Battista Grasso, the man who spent 30 years trying to butcher our family. You're the child of our greatest enemy, and my sentimental fool of a father brought you into our house and gave you my birthright, everything that should have been mine, the empire, the seat, the name, given to the son of the man who murdered our uncles." His voice shook, just slightly, the only crack in the golden mask. "Do you have any idea what it's been like, growing up second to a stranger, watching my own father look at you with respect he never once gave his real blood?" "So this was never about the casinos," Dante said quietly. "It was always about the casinos, and it was never about the casinos." Luca laughed, wiping his eyes with the back of his gun hand. "It was about justice, brother. About taking back what's mine from a usurper who has no right to any of it. I could have simply killed you. A bullet, an accident, easy. But that wouldn't have been enough. A dead Dante is a martyr. A dead Dante gets a state funeral, and I get whispers behind my back forever. Poor Luca, the lesser brother, only got the throne because the great Dante died." He shook his head. "No, I didn't want you dead. I wanted you destroyed. I wanted the whole commission, every family, every man who ever knelt to you, to see you for the monster you are, so that when I took everything, they'd thank me for it. So you gave me Sofia." Luca's smile returned, wide and terrible and delighted. "There it is. Yes, that's the masterpiece. That's the part I'm proudest of." He set down the grappa. "Do you know what I found in this room 6 years ago, right next to Papa's confession about you? The rest of it. The girl. The daughter Rosa hid. Papa tracked her for years. He kept records on everything, our father, God rest his meticulous soul. A girl, raised by a rival family, trained into a weapon. Rosa's daughter. Your sister." He watched the word land on Dante like a blow. And then the rival family, all unknowing, offered her to us as a bride, to seal an alliance, to plant a spy. They had their own little scheme. And I looked at that offer, Dante, and I thanked God, because I saw the whole beautiful shape of it at once. Dante's hands had curled into fists at his sides. "You knew she was my sister, and you engineered us together anyway." "I ordered it." Luca's eyes glittered. "I told you to show her the city. I told you to keep her close. I put the two of you in the same tower, 2 floors apart, and I sat back and watched blood find blood. Because I knew that whatever's in you two, Whatever old thing was in that room with the yellow curtain, it would pull you together, and neither of you would understand why, and you'd fall, and it would look to the whole world like the most romantic thing anyone's ever seen. He spread his hands, and then I'd reveal what you really are to each other, in front of the commission. At the wedding, I thought, or maybe I'll do it sooner now, since you've forced my hand. The great Dante Ferraro, cold and honourable and untouchable, in love with his own sister. There's no coming back from that, brother. No forgiveness, no quick death even. They'll make an example of you that men will whisper about for 100 years. Dante was silent. The horror of it was total. Not just the plan, but the patience, the years of it, the loving cruelty of engineering the deepest happiness of Dante's life purely to make its destruction complete. You'd do that to her too, Dante said finally, his voice very low. To Sofia. She's innocent in this. She didn't know. She's Grasso's daughter. She's a spy sent to gut us, and she's collateral. Luca shrugged. I'm not sentimental, Dante. That's your weakness, not mine. That's always been the difference between us. You love things, and it makes you weak. I don't love anything, which is why I win. And that, Dante would think later, was the moment everything turned. Because Luca had just told him the one thing he needed to know. Luca thought love was weakness, which meant Luca had never once, in all his careful years of planning, accounted for what a man like Dante would do, what he would burn, what he would sacrifice, what he would become, for the one thing he loved. You're right, Dante said quietly. I do love things. I love her. He looked his brother in the eye. And you just made the last mistake you're ever going to make, Luca. You told me the truth. And now I hold it too. You hold nothing, Luca said, rising from the stool, the pistol coming up. You're in a locked room under my chapel, on my ground, surrounded by my men. I hold you. Then why haven't you pulled the trigger? The question stopped Luca for half a second. Half a second, which was all Dante had ever needed. Because you don't want me dead yet, Dante answered his own question, taking a slow step. You want the spectacle, the commission. You want me destroyed in the light, not shot in a crypt where you'd have to explain the body. You've told me so yourself, which means you can't kill me down here without ruining the very thing you've spent 6 years building. He took another step. You've trapped yourself, brother. Your patience is your cage. Stop moving. Or what? You'll shoot me and lose your masterpiece? Dante's voice was cold and certain. You've never been able to do the simple thing, Luca. That's your weakness. You have to be clever. You have to win beautifully. And it's going to cost you everything, because I only ever needed to win ugly. He moved. It was not a fight, quite. Dante was Grasso's blood, the son of the man Salvatore had feared, the boy found fighting bigger boys in the street because he'd been born with something feral in him that the streets only sharpened. He crossed the small room before Luca's finger could commit to the trigger, drove the gun hand up so the shot cracked harmlessly into the stone ceiling, and put his brother against the shelf with a forearm across his throat. The men came pounding down the crypt stairs and stopped. Because Dante had turned Luca in his grip and now held Luca's own pistol to Luca's own temple, and the men, Luca's men, loyal to Luca, froze in the doorway. Because a dead Don is a dead paycheck, and none of them wanted to be the one who got Luca Ferraro's brains on the wall. "Everyone stays exactly where they are," Dante said, calm, deadly, the voice that had silenced a table of capos. "Or I paint the family archive with the last true Ferraro." "Do something," Luca choked. "They can't," Dante said into his brother's ear. "They're doing the math. Same math I taught them when I ran the whole thing. You're the one holding the truth, Luca. You're the only one who knows the plan, the timing, the proof. If I kill you, the plan dies with you. And then who do they answer to?" He tightened his grip. "Me. They answer to me. I'm still the head of this family, little brother. That letter says I'm no Ferraro, but no one out there has read it but us. To every man on those stairs, I'm still the king, so they'll stand there. Won't you, boys?" The men stood there. "Now," Dante said, "we're going to have a different conversation than the one you planned." What happened next, Dante had assembled in the sleepless hours since the crypt, cold and complete. He did not want to kill his brother. That was the thing Luca had never understood. Dante's capacity to want things past the point of sense. Even now, with the truth of 6 years of betrayal in his hands, Dante looked at the boy he'd grown up beside, the golden brother who'd stolen his glass 1,000 times to prove nothing of Dante's was his own, and found he could not simply execute him. But he could take everything Luca had used against him and turn it inside out. "You built your whole plan," Dante said, "on one thing. That the truth would destroy me. That being revealed as Grasso's bastard, as Sofia's brother, was a death I couldn't survive." He pressed the gun harder. "But you forgot to ask, what happens if I reveal it first? On my own terms, to the commission, before you can." Luca went still. "You wouldn't. It would destroy you." "It destroys Dante Ferraro," Dante agreed. "But I'm not Dante Ferraro, am I? I never was. I'm Battista Grasso's son, and Battista Grasso's territory, the old Grasso holdings, half of Naples, a claim that sat empty and contested for 19 years because the old man died without an acknowledged heir." He watched the understanding dawn on his brother's face. "That belongs to his blood, to me, and to Sofia." "No, you spent 6 years planning to expose me as Grasso's son, to ruin me, but you never once considered that being Grasso's son is a claim, a birthright, one that's worth as much as everything Salvatore ever built." Dante's voice was iron. "You wanted to strip me of the Ferraro Empire. Fine, take it. It was never mine by blood anyway. But you've just handed me a bigger one, and a way out of every taboo you meant to hang me with. Because the moment the truth is out, Sofia and I aren't a scandal in the Ferraro family. We're the last 2 heirs of the Grasso bloodline. We were never Ferraros at all. Your family honour, your brother's fiancé death sentence, none of it ever applied to us. We just didn't know it." Luca was breathing hard, his golden certainty in pieces. "You're still her brother," he spat. "That doesn't change. That's the one thing you can't spin, Dante. Blood is blood. You love your own sister. There's no bloodline claim in the world that makes that clean." And there it was. The last wall. The last horror. The one Dante had lain awake circling. "No," Dante said softly. "There isn't, if it's true." He met his brother's eyes. But I read Papa's confession, Luca. Did you read all of it? Every page? Or did you stop when you had enough to hurt me with? Something flickered in Luca's face. Doubt. The first doubt Dante had seen in him in his entire life. Because our father, Dante said, was a careful man. And there's more in this room than you found. And I'm about to read all of it, with you watching. And then we'll both know whose daughter Sofia really is. Dante made Luca sit. He made the men wait on the stairs. And with the gun never leaving his brother, he searched the box a second time. The box he'd fled from 3 nights ago after only the confession, too shattered to read further. Beneath the letter was the police file, bought and buried. Beneath that, the records of the paid woman who'd taken the girl away. And beneath that, at the very bottom, a second sealed envelope, thinner than the first, his father's handwriting fainter, as if written years later. The truth of the girl, if it matters to anyone someday. Dante's hands were steady now. Strange that, at the edge of everything, they were steady. He opened it and read aloud so that Luca would hear every word, so that there could be no lie between them ever again. I wrote once that Rosa had 2 children by Battista Grasso, a boy and a girl. That was what I believed and what I let stand. But I am a careful man, and years later a thing troubled me, and I paid to have it answered, because I do not like loose truths. Rosa hid her daughter with a terror far beyond what a rival's child would warrant. A woman does not risk her life to hide a don's daughter. A don would want a daughter, to marry off, to bind alliances. Rosa hid the girl because the girl was not Battista's. The girl was mine. Dante stopped reading. The room had gone utterly silent. Even Luca had stopped breathing. Dante read on, and his voice was not entirely steady after all. Rosa and I were lovers once, before she was Battista's, before any of the blood between our families. When she came to me to betray Battista, it was not only for money. It was because she carried my child and could not let Battista discover it. He would have killed her and the child both. The girl, Sofia, is my daughter, my blood. A Ferraro. This is why I could not take her into my house alongside the boy, not only for the scandal, but because if I claimed a daughter of my own blood, questions would be asked, and the answers would have led to Rosa, to the affair, to a war. So I hid her, as her mother had, and I have watched over her from a distance all these years, and it is the second great sin of my life, after killing her mother, that I never once held my own daughter in my arms. The boy I call my son is Battista Grasso's blood. The girl I abandoned is my own. God has a terrible sense of justice. Dante lowered the pages. The truth stood in the room like a 4th person. Sofia was Salvatore's daughter, a Ferraro by blood, the only true Ferraro heir besides Luca. And Dante was Grasso's son, no blood of Salvatore's at all, which meant, "We're not siblings," Dante said. The words came out of him cracked and disbelieving. She has a different father, and a different mother would be... No, same mother, Rosa. He forced the calculation through the roaring in his head. Same mother, Rosa, different fathers. She's Salvatore's, I'm Battista's. Half-siblings, by the mother. the hope that had flared in him guttered. And then Dante, who had been raised by a monster to find the angle in everything, saw the last turn of it, the one his father's careful, guilty pen had left for whoever was brave enough to read to the end. Because the confession said more. There was one more line. I have wondered in my old age whether the boy is even Rosa's at all. Dante read the final lines aloud into the silence of the crypt. I took a boy of 6 from the street the night Rosa died. I told the world he was an orphan I had chosen. I told myself, later, that he was Rosa's son by Battista, because it comforted me to believe I had saved something of her. But the truth I have never let myself write until now, I do not know whose son the boy is. He was a street child in the quarter where Rosa lived. He may have been hers. He may have been no one's. I never had it proven because I did not want to know. I wanted him to be a piece of her, so I decided that he was. So here is the whole of it, and let God sort the blood. The girl, Sofia, is my daughter, certain, proven, a Ferraro. The boy I raised may be Rosa's, may be Battista's, may be a stranger's child I plucked from a gutter and made into a king. There is no proof he shares blood with anyone in this story. I chose him. That is the only true thing. I chose him, and he was the best choice I ever made. Dante set the pages down with hands that would not stop shaking. The room was silent for a long time. There's no proof, Dante said finally, his voice hollow with something too large to name. No proof I'm Rosa's. No proof I'm Grasso's. No proof I share a drop of blood with anyone. He invented my origin because it comforted him. He laughed, a broken sound. I'm no one. I'm a child from a gutter that a grieving man decided to love. And Sofia was Salvatore's true daughter, a Ferraro, and Dante was nothing to her by blood at all, not her brother, not her half-brother, not anything, a stranger raised in the same house. The yellow curtain, the crying child he'd reached for, that had been real, some other child in some other room, or Sofia herself, but the reaching had not been blood calling to blood. It had been one abandoned child reaching for another. It had never been forbidden. It had never been a crime. The taboo dissolved, all of it. Every wall Luca had built his 6-year masterpiece upon. Because Dante was not Luca's brother. There was no proof of that. And Dante was not Sofia's brother. She was Salvatore's. He was no one's. The affair with the brother's fiancée was built on a brotherhood that didn't exist. The horror of incest was built on a bloodline that had never been shared. Salvatore had spent a fortune and a lifetime hiding truths, and the deepest truth of all was that there was no truth, only a lonely old killer who had chosen his family out of grief and guilt and called it fate. You're lying, Luca whispered. He had gone grey. You changed the words. Give me the pages. Dante threw them at his feet. Luca read them there on the crypt floor, on his knees, and Dante watched his brother's entire life come apart the way his own just had. Because if Dante was no one's son, then Luca had spent 6 years, his whole soul, hating a stranger for stealing a birthright that a stranger could never have truly held. Salvatore hadn't passed over his true blood son for his enemy's child. He'd passed over his true blood son for a gutter orphan he'd simply loved more. That was worse. That was so much worse. There was no injustice to avenge, no usurper to unseat, no grand story of stolen blood. There was only a father who had looked at both of them and chosen. "He loved you more," Luca said, still on his knees. And the golden mask was gone entirely now, and what was left was just a boy who had never been enough. He looked at his own blood and a nothing from the street, and he chose the nothing. There isn't even a reason. You're not even his enemy's son. You're not anyone. He just... His voice cracked completely. He just loved you more. And Dante, who had every right to kill him, whose whole life this broken man had tried to burn down, lowered the gun. "Yes," Dante said quietly. "He did, and I never understood why, and I hated it too, in my way, being the chosen one, always waiting for the day he'd realize his mistake." He crouched to his brother's level. "We were both starving at the same table, Luca. You for the blood he gave me for the love you were born into and never had to earn. Neither of us ever had the thing we thought the other one had. That's the joke. That's the whole joke." Luca looked up at him, wrecked. "So what now?" he said. "You've won. You have the pages, you have the men, apparently, God help me. You can stand up in front of the commission and tell them I plotted against my brother, and they'll kill me for it, and you'll keep everything." He bared his teeth in something that wasn't a smile. "Do it. Finish it. It's what I'd do." "I know it's what you'd do," Dante said. "That's the difference between us. It always was." He stood. "Get up, Luca. We have a family to save, including you, God help me." Dante told her everything on the terrace at dawn. He'd sent for her the moment he came up from the crypt, and she'd come running, and he'd made her sit, and he'd put his father's pages in her hands and watched her read the truth of herself the way he'd read the truth of himself, the murdered mother, the hidden daughter, the father who watched her from a distance his whole life and never held her, the blood that made her a Ferraro after all. And the last page, the one that unmade the taboo, the one that said Dante was no one's son, no one's brother, no blood of hers at all. She read it 3 times. Then she looked up at him, and the bay was turning gold behind her, and she was crying and laughing at once, the way people do when a grief and a joy arrive in the same breath. "We're not..." She couldn't finish it. "No," Dante said. "We're not. There's no proof I'm anyone's. I'm a boy from the street he chose to love. That's all I've ever been." He knelt in front of her chair, taking her hands. "You're his daughter, Sofia. You're a Ferraro. You have a name and a blood and a claim, all the things I spent my life pretending I had, and I'm..." His voice caught. "I'm nothing. I'm no one. I'm a man with no history and no name that's truly his, and I have no right to ask you for anything." "Stop." She gripped his hands hard. "Don't you dare do the thing where you decide you're not worth it. You're the only person who ever looked for the real me. You said it in the desert. You fell in love with the spy, not the bride. And I fell in love with the man, Dante, not the name, not the blood. I don't care whose son you are, you're mine. That's the only bloodline I care about." She pressed his hands to her chest, to the locket, to the two children behind the yellow curtain. We were reaching for each other before either of us had names. That's not a crime. That's the only thing in this whole poisoned world that was ever clean. He kissed her then, on the terrace, in the daylight, where anyone could see. The thing she'd asked for, the thing he'd sworn on the only thing he had left. Out loud, in the light. But there was still Luca, and still the commission, and still a war. They convened it 3 days later, the great families summoned to Naples for what they believed was a wedding, gathered instead in the compound's ancient hall because Dante Ferraro had called a commission, and no one refused a commission called by the man who ran the largest empire in America. Luca sat among them, ashen, waiting for the blade. He had confessed everything to Dante and thrown himself on a mercy he didn't believe in. He expected to be exposed and executed. It was, after all, what he would have done. Dante stood before them all. "You came for a wedding," he said. "There won't be one. Sofia Marchetti will not marry my brother." A murmur ran through the hall. Dante let it build, then cut it with a raised hand. Because Sofia Marchetti is not Sofia Marchetti. She is Sofia Ferraro, the true-blood daughter of Salvatore Ferraro, hidden at birth for her protection, and I have my father's own written confession to prove it. She is not a bride to be traded. She is an heir, the heir, his blood. The hall erupted. Sofia stood at the front, in white, no longer a shroud, and let them see her. The murdered woman's daughter, the hidden Ferraro, the claim made flesh. "And me," Dante went on when the noise died. Here it was. The thing Luca had planned to destroy him with. Dante would say it himself, on his own terms, and rob it of every fang. "I am not Salvatore's son. I never was. I am not his blood. My father found me in the street and chose me. A nobody, an orphan, no name of my own. He made me his heir out of love, not blood. That's the truth Luca learned, and it's the truth some of you suspected. And here it is from my own mouth, so no one can ever use it as a knife." He looked out at them, cold and certain and utterly unafraid. "I have no blood claim to anything Salvatore built, so I give it up, freely, here, now." The hall went silent as a tomb. "The Ferraro Empire belongs to Ferraro blood," Dante said, "and there are two of them in this room. Sofia, Salvatore's daughter, and Luca, Salvatore's son." He turned to his brother, and every eye followed. "Luca will take the American operation, the casinos, the seat at this table, everything he was born to and spent his life believing was stolen from him. It was never stolen, Luca. It was always going to be yours. You just had to wait for a nobody to hand it back." Luca stared at him, unable to speak. "And I," Dante said, "will take nothing that was Salvatore's. I'll go to what's genuinely unclaimed. The old Grasso territory, empty for 19 years, that no living soul has a better right to than the two orphans this whole story forgot." He held out his hand to Sofia. "We'll build something of our own, out of nothing, the way he taught me. It's the only inheritance of his I'll keep, that a man can make a family out of nothing but the ones he chooses." The commission, who had come for a wedding and a war, sat in stunned silence before a man giving away an empire, and slowly, one grizzled don, then another, then the whole ancient hall, they understood that they were watching something none of them had the ruthlessness to do, and it commanded a respect no amount of blood ever could. Luca found them on the terrace on the last morning, before they left for the old Grasso lands. He came alone, no charm on him, no mask, just a young man who had gotten everything he thought he wanted and discovered it weighed exactly as much as the thing he'd lost to get it. "I don't understand you," Luca said. "You had me, in the crypt, on the commission floor. You had me, cold, and everyone would have called it justice. I spent 6 years trying to destroy you. I made you fall in love with a woman I told you was your sister. I would have watched them execute you and toasted it." He shook his head slowly. "And you handed me an empire and walked away. Why? What kind of man does that?" Dante looked out at the bay, at Vesuvius, at the ancient city where 2 children had once been torn apart behind a yellow curtain. "The kind our father made," he said. "He chose me out of nothing, Luca. He looked at a gutter and picked up a child and decided that child was worth an empire. I never understood it. I thought it was madness, or guilt, or grief." He turned to his brother. "But I understand it now. Because I looked at you, after everything, after all of it, and I couldn't do the ruthless thing either. You're the only brother I'll ever have. There's no blood in it. Papa's letter proved there never was, and it turns out the blood was never the point." A faint, real thing crossed his face, the ghost of the smile he never let himself have. "He didn't choose me because I was his. He just chose me. So I'm choosing you, even though you don't deserve it. That's what family is, I think. The choosing, not the blood." Luca's eyes were wet. He looked away, toward the bay, mastering himself the way they'd both been trained to. "You'll fail out there," he said roughly. "The Grasso lands are a ruin. 19 years of nobody. You're starting from nothing." "I've always been nothing," Dante said. "It's the one thing I know how to build from." Luca laughed, wet and broken, and for the first time in his life, without a single calculation in it. "Then send word if you need men. I have plenty now, apparently." He hesitated, then held out his hand. The golden brother, the born son, the boy who had stolen 1,000 glasses to prove nothing was truly Dante's alone. "Brother." Dante took it. "Brother." It was not forgiveness. Some things don't get forgiven. But it was a beginning, which in their world was rarer and worth more. Luca left, and then it was just the 2 of them, Dante and Sofia, on the terrace above the bay, in the full gold light of the Neapolitan morning. "Are you sure?" Dante asked her. "You could stay. You're his daughter. You have a name here, a claim, a family that's real by blood. I'm asking you to give all of that up for a man with no name at all, to go build something out of ruins in a place neither of us remembers." He looked at her, and all the coldness he wore for the world was gone, and what was left was just a man who had spent his whole life certain he was incapable of this, and had been wrong. "I have nothing to offer you, Sofia. No blood, no name, no empire. Just me." Sofia stepped into him and put her hand against his face, the way he'd held hers in the dark once, like something that might break, like something worth being careful with. "You keep saying that like it's a small thing," she said. "Just you." She kissed him, slow, unhurried, in the daylight where anyone could see. "I was made into a weapon by people who owned me. I was raised for revenge, planted as a spy, promised to a man I never chose. Every single thing about my life was arranged by someone else. And the one thing I ever chose for myself, freely, against every order I was ever given, was you." She smiled, and it was not a spy's smile, or a bride's smile, or any smile she'd ever performed. It was hers. "So don't tell me you have nothing to offer. You're the only choice I ever made. That makes you everything." They stood together in the light for a long moment, the bay glittering blue below them, the smoke of the old volcano faint on the horizon, and behind them the ancient house that had made ghosts of everyone finally, for once, held two people who were free. Sofia took out the locket, the two faded children, the yellow curtain, the only thing that had ever truly been hers, and she opened it and looked at it one last time. Two children reaching for each other, before names, before blood, before the whole poisoned architecture of families and honor and taboo had come to tear the world in half. "We found our way back," she said softly. "After all of it, we found our way back to the yellow curtain." "No," Dante said. He closed her hand gently around the locket. "We're not going back to it. We were children in that room, and someone else decided everything. We're going somewhere new, somewhere that's ours, where nobody chose for us." He laced his fingers through hers, "Where the only law is the one we make." They left Naples that afternoon, driving east along the coast toward the ruined lands that would become, in time, something no one in that gilded, murderous world would have believed two orphans could build. Not an empire of blood, but something stranger and more durable. A family made entirely of choice. Behind them, in the compound in the hills, Luca Ferraro sat at the head of a table that was finally, truly his, and found that it was quieter than he'd imagined, and lonelier, and that winning felt a great deal like the thing he'd spent his whole life running from. Ahead of them, the road curved along the impossible blue of the bay, and the desert of Las Vegas was a world away, and the guns and the empires and the unwritten laws that killed men for love fell behind them mile by mile. Dante drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand in hers. "Tell me something no one knows about you," Sofia said, watching the sea. Dante was quiet for a mile. Then, for the first time in his life, he let the smile come all the way out into the light. "There's nothing left," he said. "You know all of it, every secret I have. You're the only person alive who does." She leaned her head against his shoulder as the road unspooled ahead of them, gold and open and entirely their own. "Good," she said. "Then let's go make some new ones." and they drove on into the light, two people with no blood between them and everything else, leaving behind the taboo that had never really existed, toward a future that no one, not their fathers, not their families, not the whole ancient machinery of honor and blood, had chosen for them. The only one they'd ever chosen for themselves.